high school class. Yeah, I was kind of like, wow, I wish I could go to Mark's class. Because he was very excited about it. Said it was his favorite story. So, all right, so let's start out on chapter 22. And if I get somebody to read just the first 6 verses, chapter 22, 1 through 6. Gary, you got that?
Yes, I do. I think I can take it.
Right.
Let's see, 6 goes down through there, okay. Then the children of Israel moved and camped in the plains of Moab on the side of the Jordan across from Jericho. Now Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. And Moab was exceedingly afraid of the people because they were many, and Moab was sick with dread because of the children of Israel. So Moab said to the elders of Midian, now this company will lick up everything around us, as an ox licks up the grass of the field. And Balak, the son of Zippor, was king of the Moabites at that time. Then he sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor, at Pethor, which is near the river in the land of the sons of his people, to call him, saying, look, a people has come from Egypt. See, they cover the face of the earth and are settling next to me. Therefore, please come at once. Curse this people for me, for they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed.
All right, thanks, Gary. So first off, we see that kind of interesting here that the Israelites have been wandering around in the desert for 40 years now. Is that right at the end of the 40 years they'd wander around in the desert. But the people in the promised land they're about to enter here, that they still knew about Israel and how God brought them out of Egypt. That's kind of astonishing if you think about it. 40 years later, they still went, hey, these are the people that God brought out of Egypt and defeated the Egyptian army. That the fact that they, even after all that time, people were, here Balak, the king of Moab, is terrified of them because these are the people that God brought out of Egypt. But right off, that was something that was interesting to me here, that 40 years later, people are still afraid of them. Just the stories that must have been passed around about who the people of Israel were.
And most of the folks that were 20 years old, the men, the 20 years old enough, were already gone, and the boys had grown up to become the warriors.
Yep. So I want to talk a little bit here about, it just brings up this. Balak says, hey, go summon Balaam to come and curse the Israelites. So first of all, here Balak, obviously his plan is, hey, I don't think I can defeat these people militarily, so I'm going to do it by spiritually, right? By bringing in a prophet to curse them. And obviously, he's probably thinking, Baal or some of the other gods in the area, that these false gods, that we'll just put a curse on them and that'll take care of it.
Like nobody thought of that in the last 40 years.
Yeah. But he calls for this prophet, Balaam. Doesn't really tell us who Balaam was. It's kind of the first thing when you read about a prophet, you think, well, who was this guy? Is this a man of God that was summoned here? And the text doesn't really tell us here anything about Balaam. It does say later that he was a diviner, so I think we can pick up that he was not. Well, we know he wasn't an Israelite prophet. So, although when he talks about about my God, he talks about the God of Israel as my God, but I think he probably worshiped many gods, just because of who he was. Doesn't really tell us that, but there are some clues in other, he is mentioned in the New Testament several times. So go ahead and wanted to look at those passages in the New Testament. So 2 Peter 2:15 is the first one. 2 Peter 2:15. Somebody to read that?
Forsaking the right way, they have gone astray, having followed the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness.
Go ahead and read 16 also, sorry.
But he received a rebuke for his own transgression, for a mute donkey, speaking with the voice of a man, restrained the madness of the prophet.
So here in 2 Peter, talks about Balaam wandering off, or don't be like Balaam, don't wander off the straight way into the way of wickedness. So not a real great picture of Balaam here.
He was guilty of coveting ill-gotten gain.
Yeah. So another place he's mentioned is Jude 1 verse 11. It's Jude 1 verse 11. There it says, "Woe to them, they have taken the way of Cain. They have rushed for profit into Balaam's error. They have been destroyed in Korah's rebellion." So, if you think about this here, in Jude, he's lumped in with Cain and with Korah, who we talked about last week a little bit. Korah was one of the guys that rebelled against Moses and was swallowed up by the earth. So, yeah, to be lumped in with Cain and Korah, that's pretty bad. Yeah, not a great picture of Balaam here. And then the last one is Revelation 2:14. Revelation 2:14 says, "Nevertheless, I have a few things against you." This is to the church in Pergamum. "There are some among you who hold to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to entice the Israelites to sin, so that they ate food sacrificed to idols and committed sexual immorality." So, tells us a little bit more about Balaam there, that although the story today, he does what God tells him to. We see from this passage in Revelation that after that, he actually helped Balak into enticing the Israelites into sin. I guess that's really, those are the kind of things we know about Balaam. So although I'll say he was not a false prophet, he spoke the truth in the story we're about to read, but he definitely was a wicked prophet, right? So, and that's kind of all we really know about him. The other thing we do know him is he was later killed by the Israelites. That's in Joshua 13:22. So, anyway, when you look at prophecies, it's kind of nice to know a little bit about the prophet here, and which kind of shows us God can use anybody that He chooses to use. And here's this wicked prophet that is later lumped in with Cain and Korah, but God used him anyway to achieve His purposes. All right, let's get into the story here. Let's go down and read verses chapter 22, verses 7 through 20. Let me read that, 7 through 20. Charles?
So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the fuse for divination in their hand. And they came to Balaam and gave him Balak's message. And he said to them, Lodge here tonight, and I will bring back word to you, as the Lord speaks to me. So the princes of Moab stayed with Balaam. And God came to Balaam and said, Who are these men with you? And Balaam said to God, Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent to me, saying, Behold, a people has come out of Egypt, and it covers the face of the earth. Now come, curse them for me. Perhaps I shall be able to fight against them and drive them out. God said to Balaam, You shall not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed. So Balaam rose in the morning and said to the princes of Balak, Go to your own land, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you. So the princes of Moab rose and went to Balak and said, Balaam refuses to come with us. Once again, Balak sent princes, more in number and more honorable than these. And they came to Balaam and said to him, Thus says Balak, the son of Zippor, Let nothing hinder you from coming to me, for I will surely do you great honor, and whatever you say to me I will do. Come, curse this people for me. But Balaam answered and said to the servants of Balak, Though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the command of the Lord, my God, to do less or more. So you two, please stay here tonight, and I may know that more the Lord will say to me. And God came to Balaam at night and said to him, If the men have come to call you, rise, go with them, but only do what I tell you. So Balaam rose in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with princes to Moab.
All right, that's good.
Sorry.
It's interesting here. Malak sends his people to Balaam, God says, "Who are these people?" And they're the people they're the king of Moab sent them to ask me to curse Israel. It's interesting, Balaam here he kind of doesn't get involved other than being a mouthpiece between Balak and God. He doesn't say, hey God, would you, curse these people or not curse them. He just says, hey, this is what Balak asked me to do. And then, of course, God gives him the answer, no.
You don't like that.
Yeah. And then Balak, I think it's kind of ironic here that Balak his whole plan is, I can't defeat these people militarily, so I'm going to do it spiritually. But then he thinks that he can buy
Spiritual cursing.
right. He can buy God's influence with money, which, obviously, if he's an all-powerful God, is not going to be swayed by material things. But that's what Balak's thinking is here. Is, hey, obviously, Balaam, I didn't offer you enough money the first time since you gave me the answer that I wasn't looking for. So I'm going to offer you even more money. I'm sure that'll do the trick, right? Kind of just ironic how this king is thinking about the situation that God can be bought, and it wasn't that he didn't give him enough money the first time. So, verse 20, God tells Balaam that since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but only do what I tell you. So we'll see what happens next. Remember what God told him here. somebody read the next two verses, 21 and 22.
Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went out with the Moabite officials. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Balaam was riding his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him.
All right, so God just told him to go, and now God's really angry with him for going.
But how many of us as parents have done that? I want to go, I want to go, I want to go, and finally we say, okay, fine, go. But we
Yeah, that's not a
don't
bit
mean go, we mean fine, quit pestering me and just do what you want.
I hadn't really thought about that.
Another thought too is Balaam really wanted that paycheck. And that's the reason, the only reason he would be going is to get God to allow him to curse Israel so that he could get paid.
Yep.
We're going to find out how Balaam wound up.
So, it doesn't really tell us there why God was angry at him, but...
Well, he gave him the answer, and then he said, but stay here and let me ask him again, essentially.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, he had his answer, he just...
Well,
he was
kind of like what Allison
right,
said.
right.
You know, he kept
He
asking,
was
right?
supposed to be
Yeah, and
doing,
we-
but
Yeah.
And we read in the New Testament, his mind was wicked.
Yeah. So, yeah, it seems like it doesn't really tell us why exactly God was angry, even though after God told him he could go. But I think we can imply that he had ulterior motives, right? He wanted, like Gary said, he wanted that paycheck, and God knew his heart. And it seems like that was why God was angry at him, was because God knew his heart and knew why he was going and why he kept asking.
Did he keep asking? Because the sons of Balak came, and God said no. God came and said, who are these people? Well, this is who it is. And God said no. So he said, okay, I'm not going to go.
verse 19.
The first time,
Yeah.
right. And then they came back again, and God, even he says, even if you gave me a house and silver and gold, I'm still not going to go. And that night God came to him and said, never mind, go.
Well, it says he spent the night there, so spend the night here so I can find out what else the Lord will tell me, right? So, I mean, he had the answer, and kind of get
But it changed God's mind.
right. He had the answer, and he went, okay, but I got the answer, but I'm going to go back to God and ask him again.
Double check that.
I'm going to double check that answer. So, all right, then we'll get to Mark's favorite part here, I think. Get somebody to read 23 through 30. Houston.
When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, she turned off the road into a field. Balaam beat her to get her back on the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path between the 2 vineyards, with the walls on both sides. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pressed close to the wall, crushing Balaam's foot against it, so he beat her again. Then the angel of the Lord moved on ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn, either to the right or the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she laid down under Balaam, and he was angry, and he beat her with his staff. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and she said to Balaam, "What have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times?" Balaam answered the donkey, "You have made a fool out of me. If I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now." The donkey said to Balaam, "Am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you?" "No," he said.
All right. So,
You've made a fool of me, and here I am talking to a donkey.
right. Which I think this whole thing here kind of shows, we're talking about what Balaam's thoughts were, his heart was. I think this really kind of shows where his heart was. His donkey was talking to him, and his reaction is, "You made a fool of me. And if I had a sword, I would kill you." Not, whoa, my donkey talks. You know, I think most of us, our reaction would be, why is my donkey talking, right? But that wasn't his reaction. His first reaction to his donkey talking was you've made me look bad, right? That seems like a response from a very arrogant kind of person, right?
He's so intent on what he's going there to do, though, that he misses the forest for the trees.
Yep. You're right. He was very intent on getting to Moab, and obviously the donkey was causing him to not be able to get to where he wanted to go, and he was very concentrated on getting there. And here, the donkey it was stopping him from doing that. So,
Pete,
yeah.
when we're reading this today, it's reminding me of another bad prophet, Jonah, where when God was like, do you have any right to be angry? Like at the very end of the story, he's like, I do. I'm angry enough that I could die. Like this guy's like, if I had a sword, I would kill you. Like how wrong are their thoughts? Like both of them is just completely off of God's plan.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing that his response to his donkey talking to him. Stan?
You know, you mentioned we don't really know where Balaam originated, kind of came out of nowhere. And considering what we're seeing here about his personality, I just want, this is a little bit of speculation, I understand, but is it possible he, you know, you mentioned that these stories had been passed down about Israel defeating Egypt, you know, and they knew all of this and they were frightened about it. And it makes you wonder if he was one of these charismatic personalities that was sort of an opportunist,
Yeah.
who was going, you know, looking for a way to make money, and he sort of presented himself as a prophet of this God who defeated the Egyptians back there, and it gave him a lot of power, and they started looking to him, but you know, it says God was talking to him here, so there is some mystery, but maybe it was just as much a surprise to him that God was talking to him as the donkey was talking to him. You know, he just said, well, no, I'm a prophet, you know, God's talking to me. So kind of like that medium and indoor who was surprised when Samuel came up for Saul. You know, Saul used her, and she was surprised and shocked. She wasn't really powerful, but it happened, and God used it just like he was using Balaam here. But, you know, maybe that kind of story that fits in together to me, it being an opportunist to make money.
Yeah.
He's prophesying for money here, and it shows, you know.
Yeah, I kind of remind you of the story of Simon the sorcerer.
Yeah, same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah, same thing.
That yeah, it does seem like he was an opportunist and kind of fell into his plan here of making money when obviously God talked to him, but apparently he didn't really see that as something special other than, hey, here's a way to make some money. So yeah, I guess your point is, if he didn't think God talking to him was special, then why would he think the donkey talking to him was special, right? All right, any other comments on that? You know, one thing Mark said was isn't it amazing how God uses his creation to do his will? And here, this lowly donkey, that God's using this donkey to do his will.
One other observation, he's angry with the donkey and he misses the obvious in his anger.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of a key thing too. Don't let yourself get so angry that you miss little things that are important.
Yep, that's a good point. Here, Balak was so angry at the donkey stopping him from getting to where he was going that he really missed. Talk about missing the forest for the trees, right? He was so mad that he didn't stop and think, wow, my donkey is talking. He reacted the other way of,
He didn't see the angel either, but the donkey did.
right.
I wonder why he didn't see it, or maybe just because he was blinded by his anger too.
Well, it doesn't really tell us why.
But in 31, it says the Lord opened his eyes, so the Lord must have closed his eyes.
Yeah.
Good point.
It doesn't really tell us why God allowed the donkey to see the angel and not Balaam, but
She recognized the angel
yeah.
and honored.
Again, I think it was just God. That's the way God was using the donkey, and to show Balaam that, hey, you're missing it here. You're not getting. You're not understanding the mission I've sent you on, right? This isn't about making money. This is about honoring me, and he totally missed it. All right. Any other comments on that?
Well, we're going to get to the point that he was going to die. The prophet, so-called prophet, was going to die if he continued in his quest.
Oh, yeah. All right, we'll read that next. Read. Yeah, 31 through 35. Somebody read that.
Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed low and fell face down. The angel of the Lord asked him, "Why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I have come to oppose you because your path is a reckless one before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If it had not turned away, I would certainly have killed you by now, but I would have spared it." Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, "I have sinned. I did not realize you were standing in the road to oppose me. Now if you are displeased, I will go back." The angel of the Lord said to Balaam, "Go with the men, but speak only what I tell you." So Balaam went with Balak's officials.
All right, so here the angel of the Lord, like Gary mentioned here, revealed to him, hey, your donkey just saved your life there, buddy. If you'd have kept on going, I would have killed you. Which again is interesting, considering that God told him initially that to go. So he says the path your path is a reckless one before me. Again, he's got to be referring to Balaam's motives here, because just from physical action here, Balaam did what God told him to do, right? There's no indication that Balaam disobeyed God here, so it's got to be about his motives. And when the angel says this to him, his reaction is to repent, but it doesn't really tell us, was he repenting of beating his donkey, or was he repenting of the plans that he had to go make some money off of the situation? Doesn't really tell us that.
He says, "I'll go back."
What's
He
that?
says, "I'll go back." He says in verse 34, "If you're displeased, I'll go back."
Yes.
So maybe he's going to turn around and not go at all.
Well, I mean, the angel just basically said, if you would have kept going, I'd have killed you. So I think that reaction of, oh, if you're displeased, I will go back, is, hey, if you're going to kill me, then I'll turn around and go home. But generally, again, it tells us he repented and said, I've sinned, but it doesn't really say what he was repenting of. Was it, like I said, was it just that he beat his donkey, or was he... was he repenting of his whole idea of, hey, I'll go make a bunch of money on this? Doesn't really tell us. But.
Even though God told him to go, he previously told him not to go. He said, don't go with these men. And then finally, when he said, I got to go see what more God has to say, And then he goes back to God, and God says, go on. And it seems to me it's sort of like a incorrigible child, and they get to the point where they're going to do what they're going to do, and a wise parent will probably recognize that. You could put them in a room and lock them up, but that wouldn't be a wise thing to do. I mean, we know that about our own children, but what would be, at least those that are old enough to make decisions, we know that about them. What must God know about a man and his motives, as you said, that he's insisting that this is what I want to do. His actions show that. So it's, it looks like this, that maybe God knows that he's going to have his way no matter what, and so he lets him. He lets him do it and turns it into a victory for himself, but also he meets his consequences later on.
Yeah.
So there's that initial, don't go. That's enough, really, when God speaks to us. We don't have to know any more after that. Sometimes we want to. Sometimes we insist on it.
Yep.
A different way of life. What else does the guy have to say? A different way of life that he's laid down for us?
Yeah, well, that's, you're right. It might have just been God saying, well, fine, go ahead. Didn't really tell us, but I guess.
No, it doesn't tell us. It's just drawing an inference here.
Yeah.
May not be right, but it seems that way to me.
Yep.
I had a couple of thoughts here, kind of along the same lines, but I think, the angel doesn't really ask Balaam to repent, which I think is interesting. Balaam just does anyway. So I think what's going on here is Balaam is saying he sinned maybe because of the donkey, but I think really because he thinks maybe he shouldn't have gone, right? And so that's why his thing is like, well, I'll go back if you want me to, right?
Yeah.
So I think that he thinks his sin was probably that he went and he probably shouldn't have. Okay. But then what's interesting here, I think the issue is, the angel says that his path is a reckless one. God told him, go, but speak only what I tell you to speak. And I think that what's really happening is Balaam didn't get that message. He didn't really get that. And the angel here is saying, this is the thing you needed to get. And I think maybe that's why God is angry about it. Because when he tells Balaam to go, in Balaam's heart, Balaam didn't hang on to that really important piece of information. And that would be something like, if he was going to go and curse God's people, that would be something that he might have an angel put him to death for, to prevent that from happening, right? So to me, that's what's really going on here, is that Balaam didn't get that message. Now he gets that message, and guess what? As soon as he gets to Balak, he tells Balak, well, can I just say anything? I mean, that's going to come up later, but he really got that message, and he does say what God tells him to say. And we see that happen. I think that might not have happened if there wasn't an intervention there.
Yeah, that's a great point. God initially told him, only do what I tell you, only say what I tell you to say. And then we've got this incident with the donkey, and then the angel of the Lord immediately says exactly the same thing. Only only say what I tell you to say. So yeah, that's a good point. That repetition here, God was really laying it down to Balaam here that, hey, when I said only say what I tell you to say, I meant that.
From God's perspective, it's like, well, you're not going to go, but, okay, now you're going to go, but if you're going to go, you're going to bless my people, right? That's God's, that's what happens,
Yeah.
right? But if Balaam was going to go, but not bless God's people, that was a problem.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder what Balak's men behind Balaam were thinking at this point. I wonder if they heard the donkey. I wonder if the angel, or if they just looked like Balaam was talking to himself and going nuts.
Well, you kind of get the picture from the next little section here that they didn't see the angel. So we'll get into that next. Let's read 36 through 41. Somebody read 36 through 41.
When Balak heard that Balaam was coming, he went out to meet him at the Moabite town of Arnon, the border, at the edge of his territory. And Balak said to Balaam, "Did I not send you an urgent summons? Why didn't you come to me? Am I really not able to reward you?" "Well, I have come to you," Balaam replied, "but I can't say whatever I please. I must speak only what God puts in my mouth." Then Balaam went with Balak to Kiriath Huzoth. Balak sacrificed cattle and sheep and gave some to Balaam and the officials who were there with him. The next morning, Balak took Balaam up to the Bathmor Baal, so now we've included another god, and from there he could see the outskirts of the Israelite camp.
All right, so Balak is, now he's upset at Balaam. Hey, what took you so long? And Balaam doesn't kind of leaves that whole "my donkey wouldn't go," and then he started talking to me. He kind of leaves that out of the story, right? So you kind of get the picture that he was a little embarrassed about that whole thing. His answer is just, "Hey, I'm here. I got here. Might not have been as fast as you wanted, but I'm here." Get the picture that Balak's men did not know what was going on here. But kind of thing Dave talked about here, the key is, he says, I'm here, but I can only speak what God tells me to speak. So at this point, he finally got the message from God of, I really want to earn my paycheck here, but I can only do what God tells me to speak. Is that because he had a change of heart, or because he just...
I think he might have been a little afraid.
Yeah, I think maybe it was just because he understood here that if he didn't, he wasn't going to last very long, right? Because the angel of the Lord already told him once, if it hadn't been for your donkey, you'd be dead. So, I don't, again, we don't know, it doesn't tell us, we don't know Balaam's heart here, but I kind of think he was still after the paycheck, but he understood the consequences now if he didn't do what God told him to do. All right, so chapter 23. One other comment I had on there is interesting here. So Balak gets pretty mad at him for not showing up. Hey, I'm the king. I told you to get here. How come you didn't get here? And here's kind of the parallel, or the contrast here from, here's the authority of a king versus the authority of God. Obviously, the authority of God is way above the authority of a king. And so that's kind of where Balaam doesn't really argue with him. He just says, hey, I'm here now.
So the authority of God was in the donkey to speak too, because donkeys don't normally speak. So God was giving him a second chance by allowing that donkey to see the angel and to talk to him and say, hey, you screwed up.
Yeah. And that's kind of, Balaam makes that clear here when he say, hey, I can only speak what God tells me to speak. He was saying it in such a way that Balak wouldn't kill him, but saying, hey, yeah, I get you're the king, but God's got a little more authority here than you do.
He was ready to slay him if he needed to, but he was also given him a second chance and all
Yeah.
that too.
You're right. All right, let's read chapter 23, 1 through 12. So we read that 1 through 12. Stan?
Balaam said, "Build me 7 altars here, prepare 7 bulls and 7 rams for me." Balak did as Balaam said, and the 2 of them offered a bull and a ram on each altar. Then Balaam said to Balak, "Stay here beside your offering while I go aside. Perhaps the Lord will come and meet with me. Whatever he reveals to me, I will tell you." Then he went off to a barren height. God met with him, and Balaam said, "I have prepared 7 altars, and on each altar I've offered a bull and a ram." The Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, "Go back to Balak and give him this word." So he went back to him and found him standing beside his offering with all the Moabite officials. Then Balaam spoke his message. "Balak brought me from Aram, the king of Moab, from the eastern mountains. Come," he said, "curse Jacob for me. Come, denounce Israel." How can I curse those whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce those whom God has not denounced? From the rocky peaks I see them. From the heights I view them. I see a people who live apart and do not consider themselves one of the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob, or number even a fourth of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and may my final end be like theirs. Balak said to Balaam, "What have you done to me? I brought you to curse my enemies, and you've done nothing but bless them." He answered, "Must I not speak what the Lord put in my mouth?"
So again here, got quite a bit of irony here that Balak thought he could influence God with money, by hiring Balaam to come and curse the Israelites. And obviously that is exactly the opposite of what happens. But Balak is obviously not seeing this, because he gets mad and basically, I brought you here to do a job, and you apparently did not understand the assignment. So he is not getting it. But there are the things that Balaam says here that God told him to say. A couple really important things here. He says, "I see a people who live apart and do not consider themselves one of the nations," right? That was the whole point of God bringing the Israelites into the wilderness and bringing them to Mount Sinai, is get them to understand that that's what he wanted from them, was to be a separate nation, to not be like the other nations around them. And here God's saying, hey, we've gotten, it took 40 years, but we've gotten to this point. They now, here, Balaam's saying to them, "I see a people who live apart and do not consider themselves one of the nations." So that's pretty profound if you think about it here, that God, through Balaam, is saying, hey, they've gotten to that point that I wanted to get to enter the promised land. They've gotten to the point where they think of themselves separately as not part of the other nations. I'm sure Balak had no idea what he was talking about here, but he said a pretty profound statement about the Israelites here. And then he reminds, assuming, I'm sure part of this was God knew that the Israelites will eventually have heard what Balaam said here. He also reiterates God's promise to Jacob about blessing Jacob. So a couple, he gave Balak an answer here. It wasn't the answer he was looking for, but there were, a couple really profound things said in here about the nation of Israel that Balak wouldn't have understood at all. But it was the message here was profound, and like I said, did not give Balak the answer he was looking for. Stan,
That last part of verse 10, I think is an interesting thought. Let me die the death of the righteous, and may my final end be like theirs. And you kind of wonder why he threw that in there.
yeah,
I mean, that verse actually has been used in many funerals. It's a good verse all by itself, and you just separate it from its context. We all want to die the death of the righteous. When we die, we want to be righteous, and our final end be like the righteous, So it has a lot of meaning unto itself, but in context, you kind of wonder what he's saying there. He may be saying, well, I was told to curse them, but I'm going to bless them, and if I have to die, I'm like Esther, if I perish, I perish. If they kill me, I'll still be righteous. I'll be obeying God, in doing what God said. Maybe he's saying that. Or maybe in what he just talked about there with Israel, maybe he's saying, I'd like to be like them and be a part of that group. And I don't know if he's saying that, but I'm just trying to tie it into context and see I don't know what you think about the verse.
yeah, I thought you're right. I thought that was pretty interesting too, especially considering we know how he died, right? And he didn't die as a righteous, the death of the righteous, right? He was killed by the Israelites because of his wickedness.
Right.
So yeah, it's an interesting verse. You wonder if he was starting to have a change of heart there. Maybe God was getting to him, or he just was like, hey, after God's told me all this about Israel, I want to be like them. We don't know, but it is, again, it is pretty ironic that he said that, considering how he did end up dying.
We're talking about verse 10 of chapter 23.
Yes.
Then the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, return to Balak, and thus you shall speak. And that's what God told him to say.
Well, yeah,
This
you're right.
didn't come off the top of his head by any stretch of the imagination.
God was reminding him about, if you don't do it right, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Gary. These are the words God told him to say, so maybe God was trying to get to him here by saying that, by having him say that.
Another chance.
Yeah, maybe God was giving him another chance to change his heart by telling him to say that. That's a good point, Gary. But nevertheless, like I said, it is pretty ironic of that's exactly opposite of the way he died, right?
Right, and because it's been said before, his personality and his attitude toward life. I won't instead of, I have to do what God says, but I still won't. He worked it out so he could get it.
Yeah.
Sneaky way.
Right. All right, so we're out of time. But basically, Balak is not getting this whole thing. So next he brings Balaam up to a viewing place where he couldn't see all of the army. You can only see part of it, and says, hey, try it again. Talk to God again. It's almost like Balak thought, well, Balaam's just afraid of the Israelites, not that Balaam's afraid of God. He's just afraid of what the Israelites can do. So I'm going to show him just part of them, and then maybe he'll change his mind. That doesn't work. He gives one last try, and every time it just keeps getting worse for Balak, because every time Balaam goes to God, he blesses Israel even more. And then at the end, chapter 24, verses 17 through 19, this is where it gets really bad for Balak. He says, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. He will crush the foreheads of Moab and the skulls of all the people of Sheph. Edom will be conquered. Seir, his enemy, will be conquered. But Israel will go strong. A ruler will come out of Jacob and destroy the survivors of the city. It's kind of, Balak keeps saying, hey, you didn't get the answer I was looking for. Go back again. And first it's no, I'm not going to curse my people. And then I'm going to bless them. And all right, well, you kept asking. Here's the prophecy about how you're going to get defeated. It's kind of, there's a lot of irony to this story, to the whole story here. But it really shows that God wasn't going, just a king offering a lot of money obviously was not going to defeat God's plan. I think we can see too that God uses, He's going to accomplish His goals and use people and animals even to accomplish those, despite any ulterior motives that these people have. He's going to get done what He wants to get done. All right. Any closing comments?
I just kind of like what this story says about God's relationship to Israel. Because it's weird. You're following Israel and you're interacting with Israel. Here's like a whole episode where they're just literally in the background.
Yeah.
And, as you're building up to this story, you just kind of see Israel fails and are punished. Israel fails and are punished. Israel fails and are punished. And so now somebody else is coming along to curse Israel, and you might half-heartedly expect God to say, go ahead, because they've been awful. But when it comes to other people, God is faithful to His people, and He takes care of Israel. From a disaster they would have never even known was coming. Right? I mean, even though they might face punishment and justice for their wrongdoings in their relationship with God, God is not allowing some external force to come and wipe them out. Right? I don't know. I kind of enjoy that zoomed out picture too.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting how this story is placed in the book of Numbers. You've got all this stuff that's directly about Israel, and then they're not even, none of the Israelites even have a speaking role or anything here. It's all external. But in that, God blesses them, and at the same time says, hey, they've gotten ready. They're ready now to enter the promised land. All right, please pray with me. Lord, you're an awesome and incredible God, Lord, and thank you for this time of coming together and learning your word and the history of the people of Israel, and just allowing us to see your learn more about you, Lord, and to see how you work and how you use your creation. You use whatever people you need to use to accomplish your work. We thank you so much, Lord, for your plan and your plan of salvation for us. And Lord, we ask you to help us see when you want to see the things that you want us to do, see the things that you've prepared for us to do. And don't make us rely on a talking donkey to see that, Lord. Please help us to do those things that please you. Thank you so much, Lord, for your Son. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.